Hello everybody, it's Datrina from the Alluring Bead Boutique, and in my last video I showed you guys how to create this component. Let me zoom out just a little. Using brick stitch and two concentric beading frames, one larger and one smaller, that we connected in the center here. And in this video I'm going to show you guys how to embellish this component to make this cute little earring right here. So let's take a look at the materials that I used in the embellishment. Basically, I'm using the exact same beads that I used for the first half of the project. The only thing different is I'm also adding in some Ado rose gold permanent finish seed beads. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at where we left off and how we're going to start. So when we left off, we had reinforced. We closed the beadwork on our rondelle row where we connected our little small ring in the center. We reinforced that connection. Then we sewed down through the rondelle and the 11-0 seed bead. And then we took our needle and we went through to the back side of the frame. So this is where I'm working from, on the back side of the frame. So now we're going to go back to beading on the outer edge of a frame. And the first thing we're going to do is one brick stitch using two of our 15-0 seed beads. And I'm going to bring these around as best I can here and pull my thread straight under. And I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go under the thread, under the frame, between the two seed beads, directly below the two 15-0s here on the top of the frame. I'm going to pull that through, pinching and holding my little beads here at the top with my finger directly against the frame so they don't slip under. I'm going to come up through that second 15-0, which for me in this instance is going to be on the left, because I'm going to be sewing counterclockwise here. And now I'm going to straighten up my first bead, so I'm going to come down through that first 15-0. And I'm going to pull through. Then I'm going to step back up into that second 15-0 one more time. And that's going to straighten up my first bead. And set those two little 15-0s side by side on the frame below. We are going to make a little bridge between this existing 15-0 and the next 15-0. We're going to put a little 11-0 in the middle. So pick up an 11-0. And then a 15-0. Let those drop down to the beadwork. We're going to carry them around just like we have gotten in the habit of doing, and pulling the thread straight under while pinching the frame with our fingers so we don't lose our bead. We are going to check the position of where that 15-0 is lining up on the bead frame, and we're going to take our needle and come under the frame in the spot that's closest to the bottom of our new 15-0. We're going to pull that through. Then we are going to, on the front side of the frame, we're going to come around and we're going to step up into that new 15-0. Just like that. And when we pull it all together, you'll see that we've created this cute little embellishment. The 15-0s are sitting with the bead hole orientation lining up vertically, and the 11-0 is lining up horizontally, like that. And now we're going to repeat that one more time. So we're going to pick up another 11 and one more 15. We are going to pass our needle between the two seed beads below the frame, closest to where the 15-0 will stand. We're going to pull that all through. And now we're going to come up through just the 15-0 again. Just like that. So for the next 7 stitches, we're going to repeat those exact same steps, only we're going to pick up an 8-0 first and then the 15-0. So now we're going to pick up an 8-0 in our 15 and drop that down, drag it around to position it, just like that. And then pick our spot below, closest to the 15-0 we're adding on, and sew up through just the 15-0. So I won't make you sit here and watch me do all of these because I've showed you several so far. I'm going to do 6 more of my 8-ohs. Then I'm going to do 2 more of my 11-ohs. And then we'll finish off by adding one last 15-oh so both sides mirror image each other. So here I have completed adding my 7 stitches with the 8-oh seed beads. And now I'm going back to picking up an 11 first and then a 15-oh. Coming through the under the frame between the 2 seed beads below. And stepping up into the 15. And as you work, make sure you don't catch your tail thread like I just caught mine up. And now I need to do one more with an 11, then a 15. I'm using a piece of white paper as the background because it's been so cloudy and yucky here in North Carolina that I've noticed that a lot of my pictures and videos are coming out with a little bit of a green tint. So I'm trying something different. It's a little bit harder to pick up your beads when you're working on flat paper, but sure does make it easier for you guys to see everything. So now I've added the last 2 stitches using the 11-ohs. Now right here I have my 15-oh on the base and I need to do one last 15-oh. So we are going to drop this bead down and we're going to come through basically the same spot that we just went through to line those 2 little tiny 15-ohs up right beside each other. And then step up into that last 15-oh. And pull. So now we have our embellishment base created on our little component. We're ready to do another round of embellishing. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pick up a 15-oh and we're going to sew back in the reverse direction and go straight through the first 11-oh that's sitting horizontally. Then we are going to pick up an 11 and sew through the next 11. We need to pick up one more 11-oh and sew through the first 8-oh seed bead. And now we're going to add these little crystals in between our 8-oh seed beads. So we're going to pick up a crystal rondelle, just like the ones we used here in the center, and we're going to sew through the next 8-oh. We're going to do that through all of the 8-ohs. So we're just going to keep picking up our crystals and going through the next 8-oh seed bead. And they fit really nice right in between the 8-ohs. So we'll go ahead and wrap that up. Popping, if it doesn't want to go, just kind of manipulate those 8-ohs until you get that bead to pop in there. You can actually feel it kind of pop in when it's in position the way it should be. I got a couple more to do for a total of 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got one that's not sitting good. So just spread that out with my fingers a little bit. Manipulate it till it sits in there the way you want it to. And here's my last one. And so now I'm exiting from the last 8-oh on the other side. So now I'm going to do 2 11s because we want this to mirror image the opposite side. So pick up an 11 and go through the next 11 that's sitting horizontally. And do one more. Come through the next 11. Now we're going to put that last 15-oh that we put on the other side. So pick up your 15-oh, skip over this, the next 15-oh, and come down through the farthest one over. And just pass your needle straight down through the last 15-oh right there. And now our 2 sides are exactly the same from the center, radiating outwards. The next thing we're going to do is we want to reverse direction and sew back through these beads until we're exiting this first crystal rondelle. Currently, we're exiting the bottom of this very first 15-0. So basically, all we really need to do is come up straight up through the second 15-0 there on the frame. And then to follow our thread path, we're going to skip over the little horizontal 15-0 and just poke our needle through the next two 11s. And that's so that we stay with our, our existing thread path. And then we can just move through the next two 11s. I'm going to flip my work so I can get a better angle on what I'm doing here. We're going to come through the next two 11s, the next 8-0, and that next crystal rondelle. Pull it all the way through. And now we're in position to add our last round of embellishments, which is this little bit of cute little fringe here I created at the bottom of this earring. Now to create this fringe, we are going to be sewing between our crystal rondelles. It's really simple. We're going to grow each layer of fringe by one bead. So the first thing we're going to do is start out with one seed bead, one rondelle, and one seed bead for our tip bead. And I'm going to use the 15-0s as my tip bead. So we're going to go 11-0, rondelle, 15-0. Drop those down to the beadwork, just like that. To create the fringe, we're going to skip over that 15 and we're going to sew back down just through the rondelle bead below it. Let me move that out of my way. And see, I'm going to come right back down just through that rondelle. And I'm going to pull that into position. If I need to, I can hold on to the 15 and snug that beadwork up so it sits right against the previous crystal. You want this 11-0 sitting next to that crystal that we were exiting. Now we're just going to pick up one 11-0. And we are going to sew through the next crystal rondelle on our base. Just like that right there. Heading in the direction towards the center of the embellishments. You're going to position those little beads before you move on to the next step. You want your fringe to look nice. And on the next one, we're going to add an extra seed bead. We're going to pick up two of our 11-0s, one of our rondelles, and then our 15-0. And we're going to drop those down. We're still going to skip that little 15-0 and sew just through our crystal rondelle there. And we're going to snug those beads up against the base. And pick up two more 11-0s. Then we'll sew through that next crystal rondelle. And pull all of that into position. Like that. Now before you move on, if you want to straighten up your little 15-0 so that they sit as horizontal as you can on the top of your crystals, now's a good time to straighten those up. And then we're just going to do the next one. And on the next one, we're going to pick up three 11-0s, the rondelle, and the 15-0, and follow the same steps. Drop them down. Skip over the 15 and come just through that crystal rondelle right there. Then we're going to pick up the three seed beads, 11-0. And sew through the next crystal on the base. Just the crystal, not the 8-0. Try not to twist your fringe as you work. We're going to come back through and add a little bead in between each of these seed bead fringes here just in a few minutes that will further help them to lay straight. So now for the next two crystals, we're going to go back to adding a section that has 2 seed beads before the crystal, and then we'll repeat this one on this side. So now we have our fringe added, and as we added the last fringe, we should be exiting from this last crystal. So what we're going to do now is we are going to sew down all of the seed beads that are lined up horizontally on the outside edge here of our embellishments. So I'm coming through the 8-0, 11-0, 11-0, 11-0, making sure that I don't get my thread hung up on my fringe. And then I'm going to come through the next 11-0 and that little 15-0 sitting horizontally. And we'll pull that through. And that kind of straightens those beads out and gives them a little bit more even look. Now what we want to do is we want to sew back down and come through, and where we want to finish up is exiting our first crystal. So we're going to come down through that first 15-0 sitting there on the base. And don't pull too tight because you don't want to pull all of this beadwork out of position. Just get a nice even tension. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew right straight down into that 11-0 beneath the 15-0 I'm exiting. And I'm also going to go into that crystal in the center. And I'm working on the front side of my bead frame here. Now I'm just going to use these crystals to move through my beadwork, so I don't have a bunch of additional thread showing on the outside edge of my beadwork. I'm going to go up and down. Actually, I'm coming out of this orange crystal right here. Where I want to be is exiting from this particular one here. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to just slide over till I come up. Here I'm exiting that crystal. I am going to go up through the seed bead slightly to the right. Just like that. And then I am going to come up through that 15-0 directly to the left of my rondelle that I want to be exiting. So I'm going to come up through that bead. And from there, I am going to go ahead and go straight into that little crystal from left to right. I'm going to sew up this 11-0 on my fringe. Then I'm just going to simply skip over and sew down through the next 11-0 sitting next to it right there. Keeping that loop of thread on the front side of the beadwork so you don't catch your crystal. Now I'm just going to pick up a little 15-0. And I'm going to go straight up through the 2 seed beads on my next fringe section right there. I'm going to pass my needle down through the 2 seed beads on the other side of that fringe. And once again, I'm going to keep that loop of beads on the front side of the crystal like that, so they fall in that nice and neat into that little intersection there. And I'm going to repeat that. I'm going to pick up a 15-0, and this time I'm going to sew up through these 3 seed beads on the left side of my next fringe. And then just continue on sewing down through the other side before you pick up your next 15-0, keeping that loop of thread from crossing to the back of the crystal like that. Pick up another 15. I'm going to go up through the 2 on the left of my next fringe. I'm going to come down the 2 on the right side of that same fringe unit and pick up one more 15-0 And sew up through the single seed bead on my last fringe. And then sew down through the seed bead on the opposite side. Then I'm going to make sure that my fringe is all laying the way that I want it to. And now I can sew through all of these horizontal beads on this side of my beadwork. So I'm going to come through as many as I can get through, making sure I'm not skipping any. And then I'm going to make sure that that loop of thread also doesn't connect or catch on the back side of my fringe. So there we go. So I made it through all of the seed beads that are laying horizontally except this last 15 right here. So I'm going to pass through that one. And then once again, I'm going to sew down into the very first 15-0 on my frame right there. So now we have the fringe section done. I'm going to go ahead and take the time to straighten up my little 15-0s and get them laying as horizontal as I can have them to lay as they sit on top of the crystals. And everything looks nice. Just like that. So now we're ready to sew up to the top and center our bail for our earring finding. So to get into position to add the bail, I'm going to be moving through those rondelles in the center again. I'm currently exiting from this 15-0 at the top. I'm going to sew down on the front of my frame through the seed bead and the crystal below the bottom of my 15-0. And then I am simply going to sew up and down through only my rondelles, staying on the front of my frame, till I get into position to add my bail. So we'll talk about how to center that bail. Let me flip this around. Maybe I can get through my beads a little easier. Got a couple of more to go. Making sure that you don't catch your tail thread as you're doing this step. So now I'm getting pretty close to the center at the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up through the next rondelle without catching my fringe. And let's take a look at my position. So what I want to do is I want to line this bail up with this third fringe, the longest fringe. So right now I'm exiting from this crystal rondelle. I'm going to sew up through the 11-0 that is just a little bit to the left of that bead. And then I'm going to sew through between that seed bead and the one to the left underneath my frame and between those two seed beads. I want to be on the back of this frame again. Now I can take a look and see that my thread is lining up fairly straight. I'm ready to add my bail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up an 11-0, an 8-0, and an 11-0. And I'm going to let those drop down to this beadwork. I'm going to bend them over, just like we've done previously. And I'm going to try to see if it's going to work out better for me to sew these on to the left or to the right, so that they line up directly over my third fringe. So as you can see here, I think I'm going to have to sew these around to the right. So I'm just going to flip this over and take a look. And I think I've got that in pretty decent position. So what I need to do is I need to sew it to the right. I want those two seed beads to sit really close to each other. So a thread is exiting pretty much about right here. I'm going to scoot over one section and come between those next two seed beads under the frame to the right. I am going to come up through just that 11-0 seed bead there on the right, because now I'm sewing clockwise. And before I go on, I am going to double check to make sure that this is centering up the way I want it to. If it isn't, if I want those two seed beads closer together, I can back this thread, I can back my needle out, come back down through that 11-0, and then I can take this needle and come back through the two seed beads on the base where my thread is exiting. Pull it out. If you mess it up, just pull the needle off and pull the thread through that way. And then bring your needle through a little closer to where you're currently exiting. Which is going to be right here. It's the closer one. So I'm going to bring that through. And again, I'm going to sew up through that second seed bead, which again, I'm on the right because I decided to sew this stitch to the right. Now that we're coming out of our second seed bead, let's sew across through the 8-0. We're going to sew down through the seed bead on the left. I'm going to pass my needle under the frame. I'm going to come back up through the seed bead on the left. I'm going to go back across the 8-0. And then I'm going to come down through the 11-0 on the right one more time. Now I'm going to weave this thread off, or I could go down and tie a knot here with my tail thread, but I'm just going to weave it off. So I'm going to come straight down through the closest 11-0 beneath the one I'm exiting. And then I'm going to go into the next crystal. And then I'm going to weave up and down through my crystals and secure my thread. And occasionally what I want to do is now that I'm coming out of the bottom of this one, I'm going to go backwards and go up through the previous one. That's what I refer to that as locking the thread. It just makes sure that you're getting your thread really secure before you cut it. If you see any crystals where you might have a gap and you want to work on those, you can come back through and work all the way around and use your thread bridges to connect those crystals a little bit better if you so desire. So I'm going to come down here. I got a pretty decent sized gap right there. I'm going to see if I can do anything to straighten it up. Remember to stay on the front of your frame while you're doing this. So now I'm going to try to pull these two crystals a little closer. I'm going to come back through that previous one again. Now I can move on away from that. I'm going to do the same thing on this next crystal. Backtrack one. Pull nice and tight to move those beads a little closer together. And that looks a lot better. So now we can end our thread. So to end the thread, I'm going to come through the next crystal. I'm going to come through the seed bead below it. And then I'm going to poke my needle to the back side of my frame here. Right under the edge of that frame and come to the back. And now I can safely cut my thread. And I'll go ahead and get rid of my tail thread while I'm at it. Alright, there's what we have. So to finish these off, I've got these cute little oval-shaped jump rings, and I am just going to thread one of those jump rings right through my 8-0 seed bead. And then use 2 pairs of pliers to close up the jump ring. And because it's oval, it takes a little bit of manipulation to actually make sure that it's closed. Just like that. And then I will just open up my earring finding. And we know that we don't pull backwards, we pull off to the side to open the finding. And we're going to thread this on from the front side of the of our little component that we just made. Let me open that a little bit more. Slide it on so that the back is facing upwards here. That depends on your earring finding. Mine just happened to open that way from the back. Pinch to make sure it's closed, and then there we have it. These beautiful, cute little earrings here. The concentric coral earrings is what I'm calling them, and the step-by-step instructions along with this video are included in the blog post over on the AlluringBeadBoutique.com. And I hope you like this little project and that you will enjoy the new technique of using multiple pieces of metal bead frames in your beadwork designs. Alright guys, I want to thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe to my channel for more great tutorials and techniques. Head over to the AlluringBeadBoutique.com and make sure you follow my blog over there, because basically I am adding a lot of content there that doesn't necessarily show up on YouTube, but you might still be interested. There's lots of technique tutorials as well as project tutorials over there. And sign up for the Bead Mat newsletter. All right, guys. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful, wonderful day.